mountain. We are a nation that works together.
And Voice of America correspondent Niharika Acharya now joins us. Niharika, we just heard, a little bit of George W. Bush backing Senator McCain and calling him the man fit for the post of the President of the United States. But if you could just tell us, what really were the other highlights of his speech that he made via satellite to the convention?
Well, Anida, President Bush spoke briefly. He didn't make the entire speech that he had been planning to. But during his speech, he made sure to kind of leave a legacy of his 8 years in office. He also spoke about the man John McCain is, taking care to point out the differences that John McCain has had with President Bush, essentially trying to establish Senator McCain as a man unto himself who is not going to continue another 4 years of the Bush policy in the United States. But let me get in our guest here on this. He is from the Republican Party, Congressman Joe Wilson of South Carolina, great friend of India, co-chair of the India caucus here in the House. Congressman Wilson, you were part of the audience. You were watching when President Bush was speaking. Do you think he made the right points? And was he, in talking about the differences between him and Senator McCain, trying to show people and audiences across the country that they are two separate individuals?
Indeed, he made that point, and they ran against each other 8 years ago. And President Bush, I think, in a very good-natured way, pointed out that they were different people. And so I thought it was a wonderful speech. It was very positive, and it's been a wonderful evening to be here at the convention.
Well, you're a Republican, so you're going to be supporting the president. But for a moment, if you think as just an American, how will President Bush's 2 terms in office be remembered? Because the Iraq war has left a lot of people bitter. Even as we speak, there have been, some protests outside the Excel Center here. The police has had to spray tear gas. So clearly, a lot of Americans unhappy with the president, unfavorable ratings. How will he be remembered?
I believe he's going to be remembered as protecting the American people. We had a terrible attack on our country. 3,000 Americans were killed on September the 11th, 2001. And he has led our nation in stopping future terrorist attacks. And he will be remembered. There'll be people who disagree. I understand that. But overall, I know that I appreciate for my family that we are safer because we're defeating the terrorists overseas.
Well, that's right. Nida, as you can see, this is a democracy in action, really. You have every point of view. All the criticism that President Bush has faced, we've heard about it in the Democratic Convention. The Republican Convention is a little different. It is focusing on security and how the president has managed to keep the country secure and how Senator McCain is going to do that in his next 4 years in office if he is elected, Nida.
Right, and Niharika, now a lot is being read into the kind of slot that George Bush was given to make his address via satellite. Now, obviously, we've seen this came in just before the U.S. actually starts its primetime coverage, just like our story was pointing out over there. How would you reconstruct that for us?
Well, that's right. I mean, there has been a lot of talk even before the convention started about how President Bush was going to speak on a Monday, and then the rest of the 3 days of the convention would focus on John McCain, on his vice presidential candidate, essentially trying to make show a difference between the 2 members of the Republican Party. That was the idea, really, that came across. But then you won't have the Republican Party saying these things because you have to have a sitting president make comments or at least present himself during a convention. Isn't that right, Congressman Wilson?
It's true. And again, among the Republicans, President Bush has almost a 90% favorable rating. The people who dislike him didn't vote for him. And so Republicans in general are very favorable to President Bush. We appreciate his economic policies. We appreciate his promotion of national defense.
Well, that's right. And Nida, you don't often hear these points of view. In fact, a lot of the television coverage that comes out from the U.S. and has been so for the past several years has been critical of President Bush. But the Republican Convention is an area is a place where you will actually hear favorable things about the president. But then the high point of tonight was also the speech of Senator Joe Lieberman, a great friend and supporter of Senator McCain. But we have to remember that in the year 2000, he was a vice presidential candidate, and that too from the Democratic Party. He later on left the Democratic Party, is now an independent, and was here on this stage for the first time in a Republican convention canvassing support for Senator McCain. And you know what he said? He said, I am here because country comes before party. So the Republicans trying to get some of the Democratic and independent votes as well.
Right.
And Senator Lieberman making a strong case for Senator McCain, Nida.
All right, so everybody's making a strong case for the other. Niharika Acharya of the Voice of America, thank you so much for having joined us with all those details. Also, many thanks to Joe Wilson for having joined you. Well, Avantika, it seems George W. Bush not getting the slot that he would have really wanted to get his point across.
I think what's really interesting is that both of them, McCain and George Bush, ran against each other 8 years back, and it's nice to see, you know, it reminds me of Hillary and Obama, and now, you know, how they've let bygones be bygones. Absolutely, and now praising each other. Well, that was the latest from the Republican convention, but coming up next, we'll also be telling you as to what really has been happening in Singur. The Tatas are finally fed up with all the protests that they have